Was covered and what happened?
There was one down on Murdoch Road.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial big white table tonight, girl.
The
Right.
so we denied it,
Right.
and the board actually
They're very
denied it.
difficult. They're very
But it was
technical.
beat down afterwards.
But they got constructed. Clearing land.
Yeah, but that's part of it. But they what they did, they did a piece.
You gonna hold my space.
127 acres. But they're not moving to it.
The first meeting over and talks to get the
41 degrees outside. Is it supposed to get, it's not supposed to get in the teens again today, is it?
So we were.
Supposed to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
But they were.
End of the week, 69 degrees.
Everybody signed?
Yep.
Everybody but me. How was
Didn't pass it out. It was a 2-2 split for the board.
Mark. And Mark.
Yeah.
Did you hear
I now call to order the January 22nd, 2024 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. I would like to take a moment to remember Mr. Kenneth Reed. Kenneth passed away November 27th, 2023. He served on the Planning Board and Zoning Board since 2015, and we appreciate his many years of service to our community. We expressed our deepest sympathy to his family. We now have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Conflict of interest statement. In accordance with North Carolina Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflict of interest and appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this board if there is a conflict of interest or appearance of such conflict. If a board member has a known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matter coming before this board today, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the matter involved. Does any member of the board have a conflict of interest in any matter coming before the board today? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the regular minutes of November 27th, 2023?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Old business, we have none. Under new business, we will now have election of officers. This is the annual nomination and election of a chair and vice chair as required by the Planning Board rules of procedure. I will now turn it over to Lynn.
There we go. And tonight what we need to do, Mr. Chairman, is you need to ask for nominations and then call for a vote.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Ask for nominations for the chair.
I'd like to nominate Randy Farmer.
Second.
Is there any other nominations? Okay.
No, sir.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have any nominees for vice chair for Planning and Zoning Board?
Make a motion for Miss Van Pelt. Well, I'll second that. Since she's not here. That's it, that's teacher.
Is there any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Adoption of rules of procedure. The rules of procedure for the planning board require that they are reviewed and adopted annually. I will now turn it over to Lynn.
Yes, the rules of procedure, specifically Article number 9, talks about adoption and amendments, and it specifically says in those rules of procedure that you all need to readopt these annually at your January meeting.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the rules of procedure as written?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Case number CZRM 23-04, 803 Perth Road, request to conditionally rezone 11.52 acres located on 803 Perth Road at the northeast corner of Perth Road and Autumn Leaf Road, from Troutman Highway Business to Troutman CZRM Conditional Mixed Residential. I will now turn it over to Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, this is a request for conditional zoning. The applicant this evening is Nest Communities. The actual owners of the property are TCJ Development LLC. The property is currently in the town limits and it's zoned HB, which is highway business. They are requesting this evening that the property be rezoned to Troutman Conditional RM, which is mixed residential. The reason they're asking for this rezoning is they would like to build 134 townhome units on the property. The property is approximately 11.5 acres in size. On the screen in front of you and on the overhead is a location map highlighted in red. You can see all of the parcels that are involved in the request. The property is on the corner of Autumn Leaf and Perth Road. This is a copy of our current zoning map that gives you an idea of what the zoning of properties around this property as well the property itself are zoned. Everything in orange is highway business. Pink is Calvin Creek, which is zoned conditional RM, which is what the applicant is requesting. And then in green are properties that are zoned for residential use in the county. This is a copy of our current land use map. Again, everything in orange that you see here is shown as neighborhood commercial, including the properties in question. Just to give you a bit of an orientation, the Perth Mini Mart is located on this property here. With conditional zonings, the applicant is required to provide a concept plan for staff and for the planning board and town council to review. This is a copy of that plan, as you can see. It includes the 134 lots. There are two entrances proposed, one off of Perth Road, a second off of Autumn Leaf. The units that are on the outside of the project will actually face outward. So the front of the units will face Autumn Leaf and Perth. So they will be alley-led. So this is an alley that will access the rear of these units. So the garages will be in the back. These units here will also access this alley. This is a main boulevard that runs through the site. This is the center courtyard. As you can see, these buildings here will front onto that courtyard, and then they will be fed with alleys to the rear here. On the perimeter of the property are front load units. There's also green space that's spread throughout the project. We don't know how that will be programmed. The applicant may be able to address that in his presentation. There's also 2 detention facilities proposed on the site as well. Just some zoning considerations that you all might want to consider this evening. One thing that we discuss a lot when talking about this type of rezoning request is density. I wanted to point out that what the applicant is proposing is 10.42 units per acre. What the current zoning would allow would be up to, in RM, they can do up to 12 units per acre. As currently zoned, if they wanted to do a multifamily project here, there would be no limit on density. Open space, they're required to provide 10. They're giving 18% or showing 18% on the site. I know we talk a lot about buffers, especially where there's existing residential. There's no buffer required by ordinance, but the applicant is proposing a 25-foot buffer in this location where it's adjacent to that Calvin Creek development. There are watershed requirements on this site, and they are showing those 2 ponds, as I previously stated. I wanted to talk a little bit about zoning versus land use. This property is zoned highway business, so what does that mean? That means that basically the definition of highway business in our zoning ordinance talks about this being a zoning district that is for larger commercial uses. And it's designed for commercial uses that attract people, shoppers not only from Troutman, but from outside Troutman as well. You all probably recall a lot of our HB rezoning requests actually are at exit 42. And a lot of the uses that would fall into that HB district are located in that area. This was zoned HB. It's been that way for years. Unfortunately, I really don't know the history. Maybe you all remember when this was rezoned to HB, but it's been that way for a while. And I've just listed some of the permitted uses there for you. One of the things that is allowed in HB is multifamily. There could be things on that property such as a hotel. You could have a car sales lot there. You could have a bar, a tavern, or a microbrewery. Drive-through uses are also allowed. So if someone wanted to put a drive-through restaurant on that corner, that would be allowed in the HB zoning. There's also what's called light manufacturing workshops that are permitted uses. What I think the definition of this is a smaller light manufacturing company where you may have a few employees where they're not doing mass production. Maybe a small machine shop or something like that might fall into that category. And then land use. As I stated previously, the land use on this property is neighborhood commercial. And what that means by our land use but by our zoning ordinance as well is these are commercial uses that are really intended for neighborhoods. These are things that people can walk to. They're designed for mixed use areas and along key corridors that are close to neighborhoods. They're going to provide your neighborhood conveniences like maybe your dry cleaners or your small retail stores where you might be able to run and grab a gallon of milk, or your ice cream shops or your smaller delis and restaurants, that type of thing. But it's really uses that will just attract from a neighborhood area. You don't typically see people driving from other towns to these type of nodes. But if it's developed as NC, one of the things that would change, and really with the neighborhood commercial land use, we do have a neighborhood commercial zoning district in our ordinance as well. And if it did have that designation, one of the key differences really is the size. You could do a shopping center in neighborhood commercial. You could do retail centers, but they would be limited to smaller. They'd be smaller in size. They couldn't be larger than 30,000 square feet. One thing I do want to point out, I mentioned briefly that apartments are allowed on this piece of property as currently zoned. So the applicant could put an apartment complex on here without bringing it before council, and that was something they actually considered, and we actually were reviewing a site plan for that. But apartments are also allowed in neighborhood commercial. I think the reason for that is really the intention was in neighborhood commercial. The author of the ordinance and the group that looked at changing this document at the time or creating it really thought the retail downstairs and your apartments upstairs would probably fit into a neighborhood commercial district. So I'm assuming that's the reason for that. But townhomes are conditional in both districts. So a for sale single family attached use would not be allowed in HB or NC, ironically. I wanted to point out that there is watershed. This is in your WS4 protected watershed area. So they will have to have a high density permit and provide on-site detention, which they are doing. A TIA, this is something we talk a lot about in this group. The applicant did provide that TIA. I did send a link to everyone, so hopefully you had a chance to look at that. One of the main things that we really take out of the TIA is what the recommendations are. What are the engineers saying are the needed improvements here? And I've got these on the screen for you, and I'll really let the applicant get more into that. But I do want to point out that this TIA was prepared originally when this was going to be a multifamily project. So the numbers have actually been reduced. So there's no more impact now. It's actually less of an impact. But they are looking to provide a technical memorandum with those updates to town council. And any changes to recommendations, if any, with a reduction in the number of units, I don't know that I would anticipate. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I don't know that there would warrant any other or further improvements on the site. Again, the applicant can discuss that more with you during their presentation. With a conditional zoning, we do require a community meeting as part of our process. We held this meeting on December the 19th. A report of that meeting is in your packet. It was not well attended. There were 2 attendees there that evening who asked a lot of good questions, but that was the community meeting. I also wanted to point out that our design review board actually did review elevations for this project. One of the things our design review board can do by state legislation is review multifamily projects. The only thing they cannot do, we cannot make recommendation on anything single family, and that includes townhomes. That's considered a single family attached project. Now you all through the CZ process can set those requirements that the applicant has to agree to. But this was taken to the design review board when they were looking at doing it as a multifamily townhome project. And so it was reviewed, and the elevations were approved with some conditions, which I'm showing there on the screen for you. I've also included those elevations just for your reference so you can see what the board looked at. The applicant also, again, can discuss that more in depth with you this evening. But again, by state statute, we can't take that to the design review board, but you all through this process can attach those conditions to the conditional zoning approval, or if you so choose to approve it. In reviewing this one, I have to admit this was a difficult one to come to a recommendation on. I do think neighborhood commercial at this particular node would fit in the community, but I do have some concerns with the intensity of that HB zoning in that location. So based on that, this would be a down zone to a residential district, even though it would be townhomes. So staff at this point is recommending approval, but of course you all will make that final recommendation that's sent on to council. That's the end of staff's recommendation. If you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer those. The applicant is here this evening and has a presentation for you as well.
Thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions for Lynn at this time? All right. Would the applicant like to come up and speak this moment?
Hi, everybody. My name's, oh, sorry, that was loud. Hi, my name is Skylar Brown. I am a landscape architect at Civil and Environmental Consultants. We're working with Best Communities on the project. Lynn, can I borrow the laser pointer? Lynn covered a lot of the information I was going to go over. So I think we can get a little bit more detailed with it. And we can skip past the proposed rezoning portion and move a little bit more into the site plan. As Lynn was talking about, it's 134 townhomes on the site with about 10.5 acres. And we have the front loading onto Perth and Autumn Leaf, and really trying to create a presence on this corner as a entryway into Troutman along Perth. With that, we'll have the private alleys to feed these products with the public road connecting up here. And these will be a front load product, not alley fed, but these will be front load on here. So vehicles will be pulling in off of that road. We have gone through and looked at connections for utilities. There's water available on Perth Road. I believe it's about right here. There is a fire hydrant. So that does show the main access along Perth. And then we're looking at a gravity-fed sewer option to move sewer down Autumn Leaf Road to the development down this way. We're looking at really creating a frontage along both these roads using a 10-foot multi-use path to really create that connection along the roadway for pedestrian access. That'll get developed as other projects get built within the community. And we really want to look at creating a strong buffer along this as well, along the homes, just to create a more welcoming presence for everybody. That's really my portion. If you have any questions, or the developer here is also here. They can answer some stuff.
All right. Does anyone have any questions at this time?
Since you're the landscape architect, can you get into the planting berm detail?
Yeah. We haven't specified anything yet. Cameron and I have done some berm work before and some planting. Currently doing some right now for another project. But really trying to dress it up with evergreen shrubs, ornamental trees, kind of that nature. There's nothing required through the zoning, but that's something we've been discussing.
Okay, because there was a berm planting that was presented.
I'm Cameron Fox. I represent the developer, Nest Communities. But so in the old site plan, we actually had everything facing inward to the site. So along Autumn Leaf Road and along Perth Road, those were all fed inward to the site. So the rear end of the building was facing the street. So that was the reason that we pulled the buildings off of the road a little bit, instituted a berm and had berm plantings, was to buffer, you know, so because you're gonna be looking at the back end of the building. Since we're now turning those units around and fronting Perth Road and Autumn Leaf, there would no longer be a berm instituted along both of those streets.
What was the motivation of flipping that?
I mean, well, two reasons. On Perth Road, this is really kind of your red carpet approach down into the town of Troutman. So we really saw this as an opportunity to like capture, you know, the nice architectural elements of the building and kind of have that as a starting point for that red carpet. And also, as Skylar alluded to, this sort of node kind of right here at the intersection, maybe playing that up a little bit to have like a sort of a front entry and kind of into Troutman. So it's really a presentation thing, curb appeal thing. And then along Autumn Leaf Road, as part of, I believe, Town of Troutman's capital improvement projects, there's a 10-foot wide multi-use path. So we always.
Cameron, I apologize. We're having, our town clerk's having trouble hearing you.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
So along Autumn Leaf Road, there's a 10-foot wide multi-use path as part of Troutman's capital improvement project plan. So we thought it was an opportunity to front that path on Autumn Leaf.
You're talking about that corner becoming a node, and you use the term red carpet, but you don't have any details to further explain what that
Well, it's a
red carpet would be.
visual node, right? So, I mean, as you come around this corner, you know, what do you see? Would you rather see a berm in the back end of buildings, or would you rather see the front end of the buildings that have better architectural fenestrations and presentation? And that way, you're kind of feeding these units from an alley, so you don't see the garage. You know, you see nicer architectural elements of the building. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but led to some others, but go ahead, Mark.
The other, Mark, up in next to the pond on the north, is there a trail that goes to the adjacent property? Or is that?
It's a conceptual idea of where a potential trail could go. So there's an existing project just north of our site that may have the potential for some form of a trail system. So we're alluding to making some form of a connection to another trail system.
Would you be interested in, because you have to have public open space,
Correct.
and then a nice walking trail would be a very good way to have that, you know, connectivity as well as opportunity to be able to, you know, walk around.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, is that something that you're looking heavily into, or is that something that you're wanting to offer?
Well, you know, I mean, the town of Troutman, I think as a whole, you know, is always seeking out opportunities to make a more connective pedestrian system with all these newer projects that are coming up. So, you know, we would work with the town and try and seek out opportunities to make a better connective system, yes.
Any other questions at this time?
So none of this berm planting is going to be incorporated in that.
Well, it's not that it wouldn't be incorporated. This is just a different approach to what we had before. This is a different site plan. I mean, from a design perspective, I would think in curb appeal from Perth Road and Autumn Leaf, you would rather see the front end of a building and not be staring at a garage and a berm planting. I mean, if we were to flip everything around, then of course, you know, we would reinstitute that berm, and we'd have, you know, lush plantings, because you're essentially wanting to block the view from Perth Road and Autumn Leaf. But we're flipping it. I mean, this is a much more appealing, sort of adds character to the space.
Have y'all looked at an initial grading plan for this?
Not too heavily.
Well, to go off his question, I mean, are the finished floor elevations going to be the same as Perth, below Perth, or above Perth?
We would work for it to be as level as possible with Perth Road. I mean, everything falls from Perth to the back of the site, so I think we've got a really good opportunity to make that as level as possible, because everything falls back to that.
Create the berm.
Just my final comment would be, design architecture, it's a personal judgment call, right? What's somebody going to want to see? Do they want to see this facing the street? Or would they rather see, is that appealing to somebody or not? It's their personal preference.
Yeah, let me first address this presentation that we had.
Sure.
So those were totally different product.
So you're proposing something different than what?
Well, potentially. I mean,
Okay.
this is a fee simple build, so this will be a builder. So we would take those requirements that we come up with in that meeting, and we would incorporate it into a product.
Okay.
So it could be that we need to revisit that in some capacity, but everything that we agreed upon, in that meeting, in some way would be incorporated into a new product.
And I'm not, set this aside for a minute, just the simple concept of, are we gonna screen it with plant material so as you drive down Perth and Autumnleaf, you really don't even know the community's there? Because if you're using cryptomeria, magnolias, ligustrum, and an elevated berm, it's gonna basically hide the community. Or do you want some sort of architecture fronting the community that's wide open view to somebody's front doorstep? That's the dialogue.
And then I got a question. If you flip it, everybody that lives on the inside is looking at the back of garages.
Well, it's back to back.
They're back to back, they have an
Back to
alleyway,
back,
so
okay.
garage would face garage.
Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
The-
You've got public street, which these are all front loaded. These garages will be right against the street. This is also public street, also public street. These are the ones that are
Two questions on that. When you say public street and alley fed, is the alley gonna be public or private?
private.
Private.
And they'll have an HOA to make sure the maintenance is okay? Okay. And my question, with the architectural requirements, have we agreed to those, or has town agreed to those?
They're part of their request this evening, so you all would have, the planning board would have to approve it as part of this conditional zoning. I was just presenting what the design review board had approved, so you all would know that that had been done with a different product. But they're willing, they've agreed, since the design review board looked at it as a multifamily project, they agreed to include those conditions in the conditional zoning approval. So, yes, it just needs to make sure it's conditioned, with those conditions included, or whatever you choose to include there. You can choose to include them or not. It's completely up to you as a board.
Lynn, did we change some things to where it's required to have a berm or some sort of?
There was language that was added for single-family, yes. Single-family homes that back up to a main right-of-way does require a berm.
Okay. But multifamily is not.
Well, not multifamily, and this is a little bit a different product, but you wouldn't want to have a berm in front of a front-loaded product, because basically you would have someone sitting in their front yard would face a big berm. So if you want the berm, then they would need to probably flip this product around to where it's not front-loaded. And I think that was the point that Mark made. That's really the conversation as to what the board prefers, and ultimately what town council prefers. Is, do you want the berm with the rear-loaded product, or do you prefer something that has, more of a streetscape type of feel to it, where you've got, because you're going to have a 10-foot sidewalk running down there. Hopefully these units will have porches on them. Those will front onto that sidewalk. So it just depends on what you all prefer as a board, and like I said, ultimately, what town council prefers.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or at this time? Is that all your presentation, or do you have more?
Yeah, that completes our presentation.
So the pictures that we have in our packet are the old pictures, is that?
That's what I'm gathering. Did I hear you correct? I don't want to clarify. Are you just going to develop and prep this site and then have a builder come in and build the townhomes, did I hear that right?
Correct.
Okay, so really it's, they're just prepping the land, it's the developer, and then a national home builder that does townhomes, such as Ryan, would be the ones that would actually construct the buildings.
But we need to put the architectural, accents that we want in it now. And do we have a list of those?
They're in your packet, and then within the conditions, those are in your staff report as well.
Okay.
So you should be able to locate the conditions that the applicant is proposing. And then if you need those conditions, the 3 conditions from the design review board, I can pull those back up on the screen. Actually, it was just 2 conditions.
I noticed in the landscape and buffer, it said 2-inch caliper. I think we require 2.5, I believe.
That is correct.
So,
And we will be checking all that when it comes in for plan review. When we review it, we'll be making sure it meets those ordinance requirements.
and under architecture, it says where practical buildings with a front load orientation should include a mix of architectural materials and variations of architecture components to accent the garage doors, blank walls shall comply with the ordinance. Okay, this is where practical. I think it should say buildings, leave out where practical, with a front load orientation shall include a mix of architecture materials.
Yeah, there was a fairly robust set of requirements that came out of the DRB review that we had with that committee, which, I mean, I thought coming out of that meeting, we were all pretty well on board with the product that had been presented.
But it wasn't fronting the streets. And if you're gonna have rear load with garage, you have an elevated berm, and you have plant material that's gonna reach 15 to 20 foot tall, you're never gonna see those garages. You're never gonna see the homes, more or less. You got a 10-foot berm with a 15-foot cryptomeria mixed in with magnolias, ligustrum, and maples. You're not gonna see that.
Okay.
So the project's changed. I visualize Redwood down, as you're going down to the exit 42.
Yeah.
It's open with a sidewalk, a couple oaks and or maples, but you're seeing those homes right to the street. And that's what you're gonna end up seeing here.
I'm not real fond of that.
So do you see architecture that's by a tract home builder, or do you see a berm with plant material that screens that community? Those are your choices.
And I like playing devil's advocate in that regard. They're here to make a profit, or, excuse me for saying it like that, but that is what the market study is saying, that the Redwood down at 42 is selling. And so that is the new norm or approach that they're going with.
Okay.
So, I agree that that is something that may or may not, I wouldn't want, but if the market study is saying that, because you did the market study where this is a front-facing lot versus a rear-facing lot, it's showing it to be the way that they're proposing it now.
Okay.
It'd be more marketable. My opinion would be that I would keep the front-facing like you're presenting it, but I would, make more of a robust, lot trees or more, definitive, streetscape, thank you. In that regard, as a compromise to do it that way, because I mean, you sit at the light, you can almost watch TV, at 42, but, to each their own.
Are these gonna be that close to the road?
No, actually, I would say the intent would be to pull them as far off, especially Perth, given that it's a little busier. Pull them as far off as it makes sense to kind of provide a little bit of a safety buffer between, front door and roadway. And obviously, you've got, I mean, there's a pretty good distance there, kind of between the property line and the front of those buildings.
Do you know what that number is?
It's about, yeah, 25 feet from the back sidewalk. So you take the 10-foot width of the sidewalk, that puts you about 35, and then I think it's an 8-foot planting buffer. So we're looking at almost 42 feet from edge of pavement along Perth and Autumn Leaf for those areas.
And does that leave enough room for widening of a road in the future?
I would say so. I think you've got some room within it for sure.
If you did symmetrical widening, you would add, this doesn't have curb and gutter on Perth, correct? You're not installing curb and gutter?
I don't believe it does, currently.
Isn't there something mentioned about widening at some point?
The 2234, whatever the project we have in Troutman is 10-plus years out, is that right?
Probably, yes, at least.
I mean, but yeah, that's a very good question, because you can't do it that way. I mean, you can't ask for additional right-of-way on an anticipated project.
But it's conditional and we can ask for more space
You can,
for that,
potential, yes.
or for whatever.
Because you're probably, at Autumn Leaf, you're looking at probably turning lanes right there. If that's gonna be, is it 4-lane divided is what they've called for that cross
For
section?
Perth Road or
Yes,
for,
ma'am.
I believe so. Is that what it shows in the,
Okay, and also I noticed, it says future amendments to the conditional zoning concept plan, and these development standards may be applied for by the then owner or owners of a particular tract within the site involved in accordance with the provisions of the ordinance. Are you saying that, okay, you build part of it and you're gonna come back and change part of it? Is that what that's? It says within, it's not that many acres.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
It's under amendments to rezoning plan, item 1. Future amendments to the conditional rezoning concepts site plan and the development standards may be applied for by the then owner or owners of a particular tract within the site involved in accordance with the provision of the ordinance. It says within.
that's just saying they have the right to come back and ask for the plan to be amended, which anyone who has a conditional zoning approved has that right. Like if they
Okay.
want to amend something about the plan.
But it's kind of sounds like it's within like a lot or something. Is that?
It could be.
Well, I mean, there's certain things that are considered minor amendments, which can be done administratively as long as they're not increasing the density, doing major changes to the layout. But if they do any significant changes to the plan, it requires an amendment,
Okay.
a CZ amendment. I mean, since I've been here, we have not seen one of those, but I've worked in other jurisdictions where it's happened. Sometimes what'll happen is someone will come, get their CZ approved, and for whatever reason, they don't build the project. So it lays dormant for a while. They sell it to a new owner, and that developer may have a different vision for the property. So sometimes that's when you see a CZ amendment occur. I think that's all the intent of that condition is to say they have the right to come back.
All right, and the item 2 on there says, if site plan approval is not achieved within 12 months of obtaining a RMCZ approval, then the current landowner shall have the right to revert back to the previous zoning of highway business. Project site would then be governed under the highway business classification standards in perpetuity and would no longer be subject to the standards outlined in the rezoning. I'm not even sure that's legal.
Actually, I ran that past Gary, and he said that was acceptable.
I don't think that's a good idea. That's like, you got your,
Well, they have 2 years now, and if it's not done in 2 years or they've secured permits, it reverts back to HB. They're actually limiting the time they have to get permits.
yeah. And they could do what they want to do under neighborhood,
Neighborhood
Commercial.
commercial? Well, they would still have to get a condition, it would still have to be conditionally zoned.
would basically be the same, wouldn't it?
Well, we've got a current site plan under by right. It's a by right plan for apartments.
Which is in HB, apartments are a by right use, so yes. They could go out there tomorrow and start clearing the site or submit plans for us to review for approval, which they had actually started that process, and decided they preferred to do a for sale product instead of for rent. And when you sell a product, like a townhome, you subdivide the property under it, so it's no longer a multi-tenant project. So that, you know, it's not an apartment complex anymore. So that's the reason they're here this evening. So the NC would allow the apartments. So with the HB, but neither of them would allow townhomes. So that's why they're here this evening.
Oh, the NC won't allow that to be subdivided all either.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Is there any other comments or questions at this time?
I got one, and you brought a very good, about the project that's coming down Wagner. I was trying to figure out, if we were to ask for 40 foot from center of road, as far as right of way, which would incorporate, could incorporate the 10 foot multimodal pathway. Could it still work?
Off of Perth?
Center of Perth.
Well, the 10-foot multimodal pathway, I think, is only required on autumn leaf.
I apologize. What was the quote?
I believe the 10-foot multi-use path is only required along autumn leaf.
It is, but a sidewalk, if I'm not mistaken, will be required on Perth Road.
Okay.
That's what it looks like. It continues from, their whole frontage is the same width.
Yeah. And I will say so the front setback off of the Perth Road right-of-way, I can't remember exactly what it is, whether it's 20 feet or 25 feet. 25 feet. We've actually pushed those units even further back than
Right,
25 feet.
What I was looking at is if you were to have 40 foot from center of Perth for future expansion, then what that does is that allows for two 12-foot lanes, a 6-foot lane for a turning lane, something for a median, and then a grass strip, curb and gutter, and then the sidewalk. So then there would be no, if or when the project was to come through, there would not be any, it'd be a whole lot easier to deal with it now before anything's built than it is trying to deal with it with the project coming through. So that's what I was asking, could you maneuver your site to allow for 40 feet from the center of the road to be used as right-of-way?
There was a lane added for Calvin Creek.
Well, I mean, I understand, hang on, y'all got time for that. I'm just asking for their side of the road, for Perth. You could have two 12-foot lanes going north, and then you could have a half a lane, which would be the center of it, 6 foot, for turning left onto Autumn Leaf. So that's 24, that's 30. And then a 5 foot, 2.5 foot for a curb and gutter, 5 foot for a sidewalk, and then another 2.5 feet would be for a grass strip, a utility strip, which you could make it work in 40 feet. I think with a driveway permit, DOT is probably gonna ask you for more. But I'm just trying to figure out what, if possible, you could do it with 40 feet from center of the road.
Well, in the event that would become a requirement to do on this project, I think the way we currently have this drawn, it would accommodate that. Because as Skylar alluded to, I think we're roughly 42 feet already off the existing backup curb.
Yeah.
So if you take 40 feet from the center line, the current center line, I think we more than meet that.
Okay.
But we would, I mean, we would have to study that a little bit further as we get into the plan.
I understand, I'm just trying to, if we plan ahead that would help with everybody's, headaches later. That-
You-
Right now.
You are
We
correct.
hadn't opened up the meeting for public comment. You'll get opportunity to speak.
Sorry, sir. It's hard. I know. Thank you.
Anything else at this moment? All right, thank you. We'll probably have some more questions shortly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I will now open up the meeting for public comment, and I would ask that whoever would like to speak would sign at the roster, and that whoever's speaking can speak, but everyone else, please give them respect and let them speak, and don't talk while they're talking. And you got 3 minutes, and one time. All right. No.
Well, my name's Glenn Weber, and I'd like to apologize for getting too caught up in the moment. First off, just a question, how many of you all live in the ETJ area versus town limits?
I live in ETJ.
Okay. I've just got a few thoughts and observations on this. I actually live in a property that's to the very top of the border, adjoining a Nest community project that has been resold. They were never the developer, which is a good chance that's going to happen here. My questions are, one, the traffic impact analysis, it really needs to be completed before anything else is done. There's a lot of traffic on this road. The road is not fit for the amount of traffic on it with the size trucks that are on it. I'm always run off on the road, quite a few other people are. If you go on Facebook, you can see the people with their little monitors, and there's people running through the front yard all the time down there. They're passing school buses with kids getting on and off. It's not a safe road. The Watershed Act that this area is in, I'll only comment upon the thought that the developer that's above me that goes down to Autumn Creek is now, I believe, the third time redoing the retention ponds because they keep having problems. They're flooding out the creek at the bottom. You go down there and the banks are cut this deep because they're dumping it in. They've just in the past week and a half redid that retention pond again. They've done it 3 times. It's a nice looking development. The development right above them was also by this company and was resold. Nobody gave a thought to where the electricity's coming from. I've been told by Duke Energy and the developer, no power can be pulled to this area from wherever. For the past 2 years, they've threatened to take my land by prescriptive easement. They've threatened to sue me. They've claimed they've had a right-of-way and an easement. Turns out they didn't. So for 2 years, we've been battling with them, just showing up on our property, threatening to have my wife arrested for even saying, it's not your property, we don't want you here. You'll be arrested. And they knew the full time that they never had an easement to come across our property. Why do people have to live like this? We had a nice land use plan in place where we had our rural areas and all, and every developer sees a spot and they come in. And I asked Ron White, I said, why are they letting they do this? He said, because we're afraid to be sued by the developers. Well, 3 minutes plus. The thing is, you can turn down a project because it's in the, just because they apply for it. If it's in the land use plan, they don't have to sway. And I guess I used up my 3 minutes. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. My name's Craig Edwards. First of all, I want to thank you for what you do. You sit up here, you listen to people like me, you put a lot of time and you put a lot of effort into what you're doing. 8 times out of 10, it's for naught. So I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate how you vote, and I appreciate the effort you put into it. So what are we looking at tonight? We're looking at 135 townhomes to be put on the corner of Perth and Autumn Leaf Road. If you look at the 2018 strategic plan of the town of Troutman, which is the only one on their Facebook or on their website, so it may be the last strategic plan they did, I don't know. But I pulled it from there because I wanted to use statistics that they approve. In 2018, the population of Troutman was 2,500 people. In the area of Perth Road and Autumn Leaf Road, there were 10 to 25 accidents per 1,000 miles driven. At that time, car traffic on US 21 was 10,000 to 19,000 cars. Car traffic on Perth Road was 5,000 to 10,000 cars a day. That's in 2018, way back before we have the houses that we have now, way back before the houses, 5,000 approved right now, but not built?
Close.
5,000. 5,000 houses approved but not built. So I want to talk a second about philosophy. We come in and everybody says, why should we turn this down? What's wrong? Is there too much traffic to turn it down? Is it in a watershed to turn it down? I suggest to you that let's change the paradigm. Let's look at why should we approve it? What's the reason to approve 135 more, $450,000 to $350,000 houses when the average salary in the town of Troutman is about $45,000 a year? There's nowhere for those people to live, but yet we're wanting to approve more of that. What are you going to approve? You got a packet, right? What's in your packet? Apartments. There's a reason they're not putting apartments there. They're not putting apartments there because they're not financially feasible. In the Charlotte metro area, which includes Mooresville and Troutman, there's 45% more apartments built than there is people to go in them. And they continue to build them. The occupancy rate, the last time I looked, was 32%. So we've got a packet. It's got apartments in it. It's got berms in it. Or it don't have berms in it. I'm not sure yet, right? We've got a TIA that they were going to bring to us, but I hadn't heard it. I believe it's right before the meeting. We're going to discuss the TIA. Maybe y'all have got it. I haven't seen it. You mind if I step away from the podium for a second? So in the informational meeting, I was one of the two that was here. My wife was the other. And maybe I misunderstood. This was a public road, and everything else was not. So now this is a public road also. These are alleys, backloaded. How wide are they? Can a fire truck get in there? Can the ladder truck make a turn? This intersection, how far is it from the intersection, which is conveniently left off of the D.R. Horton development? How far is this intersection from the entrance to the D.R. Horton homes? At the informational meeting, this was going to be a right turn only. I hadn't heard that. Don't know what's happening there. This retention pond backs up to people's houses. I think you have plenty of reasons not to approve this. I haven't heard one reason to approve it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for coming, no matter why you're not.
I'm going to be the minority tonight. I'm the only person in this room that you can see their rooftop on this map. My house is right here. This is where I live. Okay? I would rather have these townhomes than an apartment complex. Carrie Bates. I know some of these people. I kind of slipped up. Sorry. I would rather have 134 townhomes than what they could build right now, which is an apartment complex with a godforsaken number of units of rentals. Okay? The idea of the front-facing is attractive to me because I've wanted for a long time a walking path to get from my house to like Autumn Leaf down to Perth and connect into town. This will give you a nice view walking down Autumn Leaf, where you're seeing, if y'all been through Morrison Plantation, do you know where Morrison Plantation is? Those townhomes in there are set up just like this. The fronts face the road, the front porches and sidewalks, and they all have backload garages. I think it's more attractive than seeing either a huge vinyl fence beside somebody's house or big trees we're trying to block what we don't want to see from the back. So it can be apartments, and he could say they may not want to build apartments, but somebody may want to. And the two brothers that own it bought this 10 years ago with the intentions of putting a shopping center in here. Nobody wants to put a shopping center there. So if they're never going to put a shopping center there, anything else commercial, I have no interest in. I do not want businesses there that are going to be manufacturing or anything else on the corner of my house. So to me, as the closest person who has to live next to this, this is the most viable option with the small parcel of land that we're dealing with. And to at least have 134, hopefully, homeowners, not a bunch of them rented, they would take more pride and it would be more stable than some of the apartment complexes we're putting into town. So Perth is already 3 lanes right there. I mean, I'm sure you all know that. They've added a turning lane. So it's already widened from Autumn Leaf all the way up to that next development. So I don't see how there would never not be enough land for you guys to widen any more that you needed to if we had to put more lanes in. But as the person who has to live next to it, I will argue something I do not want. But this, to me, is probably the best option with the use of this land that you have to work with.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak on this rezoning?
So my name's Greg Peterson. I was going to actually mirror the comment from the gentleman who spoke earlier, which was anytime people are asking for a zoning change, they kind of need to prove their case. And in my opinion, personally, I like the idea of this property being used for a highway business versus super high density residential. I lived in downtown Chicago for 8 years. I did not move to Troutman to live in downtown Chicago. I'm here to tell you that those lots are smaller than downtown Chicago city lots. And those little alleys with no driveways, where are you going to put 250 cars in that community? Because that's what you're talking about at this point, and that's what they've asked for approval for. This community, as presented, is incompatible with the developments around that we worked so hard to get 4 houses per acre density. I think it's incompatible with the city of Troutman, personally. And when you look at Autumn Leaf Road is turning into the 77 on-ramp because it's the fastest way to get to the highway. And as we build more and more high-density residential, there's going to be more and more traffic. And nobody's talked about the infrastructure development that's necessary to support communities like this. And it scares me. 138 different residences on 12 acres? It's not what I moved to Troutman for. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Sarah Nessler. I'm not an architect and I'm not a civil engineer, but I was wondering if you live on the alley and your garage is on the alley and someone comes to visit you, how do they get to your front door? They have to go all the way around. There's no place for them to park. It just doesn't, I don't know. Again, it's not Chicago, and this isn't why we all moved here. We've got 1,000 homes behind us where there used to be a farm. So I just was looking and I'm going, well, okay, there's this road. Doesn't even look like there's enough on the public road for cars to park if you've got company that comes for a birthday party or whatever. And especially with the alleys, there's no place for people to park and have to go all the way around, unless I guess there's maybe little walkways in between to get to the front door of a home. If I'm a home buyer, I want the part of my home where we don't really live to be on the busy street. That's the way I'd look at it. If the garage is on Autumn Leaf or Perth Road, then the noise is in front of the garage. It's not where the living room or bedrooms would be, but I don't know what they ended up with pictures. But like I said, I'm not an architect, I'm not a civil engineer, but these were things that were going through my mind.
Thank you. Anyone else?
How's everybody doing? My name is Chris Wagner, named after Wagner Street here in Troutman. I own property behind Perth Mini Mart. I'm going to be putting our residence there. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to kind of sway my opinion out of this. I just brought a pile of statistics I'd like for you guys to hear. On October 23rd, Duke Energy released a press statement. They're going to be raising residential energy rates. Starting this year, we're going to have a raise on October 1st of 2024 and October 1st of 2025. That is to reflect the $6.3 billion in upgrades that Duke Energy has to do to sustain the energy demand in this area. Right now, Duke Energy predicts of customers in this area of the Carolinas, over the next 15 years, we're going to have an energy demand that is greater than Delaware, Maine, and New Hampshire combined. I got a quote here from Dr. Robert Cox of UNC Charlotte's Energy Production and Infrastructure. Right now, he works with Duke Energy, and right now he is saying the highest demand of energy is obviously in the summer and the winter. And he is quoted right here saying, the problem is we do not really have a good resource to deal with peak energy demands due to the lack of infrastructure. But we're going to be building more houses, and Duke Energy is going to be supplying energy to those houses. And just today, you can look on your phone, Duke Energy announced layoffs today. So we're going to be dealing with Duke Energy laying off employees, and we have a lack of infrastructure. I have concerns. Right now, I pulled some quotes for the U.S. Census Bureau that shows a increase in population from the year of 2020, 2021, and 2022. 2020, Troutman had around 3,700 residents. Right now, we just have a little over 4,000. The reason I tell you that, and the reason it's important, I pulled statistics from the Federal Bureau of Investigation National Incident-Based Reporting System, which is reported by Troutman Police Department to the FBI. In 2020, we had 6 violent crimes in Troutman, including murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and motor vehicle theft. 6 of those. One of those violent crimes occurs at a residence. Jump a year forward in 2021, we jumped up from 6 to 11 violent crimes. Of those violent crimes, 5 happened in a residence. We go to 2022, we have a total now of 16 violent crimes reported by the Troutman Police Department to the FBI, and of that, we jumped up to 8 violent crimes happening in a residence. The reason I pulled the U.S. Statistics Bureau to show you the population increase versus what the Troutman Police Department reported to the FBI, it shows a correlation between population increase and violent crime. Just to give you a background of what I do, statistics make sense to me. I'm a scientist. I trained under a senior scientist throughout the state of North Carolina. Before that, I worked in federal, state, and local law enforcement where I prosecuted crimes. So with the lack of energy infrastructure that Duke Energy has admitted, with the rising crime rate that's happening in residences inside of Troutman, and we're proposing more residences, I have concerns. So I have to ask Troutman, I understand we want good, population growth and economic development, but is this the kind of growth that we really want? Because the numbers don't lie, and it shows a positive correlation. And you feel free to look at these if you guys want to. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I will now close the public comment time. Oh, did you have any? I forgot to ask. Thank you, Kim. Okay, are there any comments from the board?
I've got a couple more questions for Nest.
If y'all could come forward so we can hear you.
And they just come from the public comment. Will you have control over the covenants and restrictions for the HOA dictating what percentage of these townhomes can be rental units?
This is Dave Hughes, Nest Communities. Yes, we will have the ability to set the covenants and restrictions for an HOA.
Do you have a percentage in mind for this community?
We haven't contemplated the as far as rentals, whether there's going to be a restriction on that or not. Like any other community in surrounding, like Calvin Creek or Falls Cove, people have the right to move out of their home into another home and rent the home they had. And so we envision these people to have the same ability if they so choose. But this, again, this development is HB, it's currently zoned HB, and we had a plan submitted for a similar looking plan to this, but it was all for rent.
Sure.
So we took the time to relook at it and for the intent is a for sale product.
Reason why I asked that question, because the comment was made, rather have townhomes versus apartments, but if there's no restriction on the percentage of rental units, I could go buy 20 of them and rent them all out. That'd be 20% of what, 18% of what's there. So that's where that question comes from.
Yes, just the same ability you could buy 15 houses in Calvin Creek.
Understand.
Yes.
And then to the parking question, how many cars will fit in the garage? And then I do see some on-street parking. I'm assuming that was to address any visitors or
correct
2 cars per family. So just the number of vehicles that'll fit in the garage, is it 1?
On the alley loaded product, I think it's 2 cars.
Into the garages?
Into the garage,
Okay.
With an additional on-street parking.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I have one follow-up question on Mark. I understand that the HOA will limit the rentals, but I'm under the impression from previous experience that if the HOA doesn't take control and the management group has it, and the state law says that you gotta put this in effect before that number expires, meaning that if you limit it at 20% and before the HOA of the community takes over, they're at 25%, it's nothing can be done. So the rentals growth has exceeded the number.
Our intent is for a for sale product. I'm not sure what your,
No,
there's
what
a
I'm
question
saying is
there.
that sometimes HOAs don't take over when they're supposed to because commitment from the community voting and different things. And if rentals are, houses are flipped to rentals before that number is met, it's nothing that can be done.
So our HOA would be established prior to the first home closing. And
Really? Okay,
yes, and
okay.
the
I
CCNRs would
misunderstood.
be recorded with registered deeds that it's like a deed restriction. They would have to abide by the covenants and restrictions.
Okay, I was just wondering because the neighborhood I live in, the HOA wasn't turned over until about 4 years into the contract. And now the rentals are just running rampant. But I just had to ask that question. Thank you.
Now, are we, I mean, I don't even, are they allowed to restrict rentals?
The town cannot, but an HOA can do so if they choose within their covenants.
Any other questions or?
I would just say one quick thing that, this is a conditional zoning, which comes with the conditions that we provided, which we feel is a better way of presenting a development than by right with no restrictions and no public input. And so this, we've evaluated multiple options for the site. There was a mention of the guys that own the property tried to get a grocery store there for years and years, and it's just not, land's not big enough, and they want a grocery store somewhere else. But we have some buyers for the rental townhome plan right now, but we feel like that's not the best fit for Troutman. for this location. So we've had some high-quality architects and land planners. We've spent a lot of time with this. We've been through the Architectural Review Board with the previous plan. We've tried to present kind of the best restrictions and conditions for this project as possible. So hopefully that you guys can appreciate that, and we've asked for your approval.
Thank you. I was just looking at this, and in the written part of it, there's not much in here as far as restrictions I mean, there were some pictures, but then you're not gonna use those. I mean, you've changed the product, so what we have, we got some pictures, but I don't know that they're really accurate. And there's not a whole lot in here. There is acceptable materials, but there's not a lot of detail on what's in the written part of this. I think, Mark, you've been involved in,
I didn't look at the,
That's what I was trying to find. I found them, and I lost them again.
I'm familiar with the previous submittal.
yeah, this.
It's the same stuff, but,
Yes.
So per the by right zoning in HB, there's a baseline set of architectural restrictions per the UDO, and then the review that we went through with the DRB committee, we added and enhanced those restrictions, and then coming out of that meeting, we agreed to a look of that front facade of the units that were proposed. So there's a baseline set of restrictions in the UDO, and then we added more robust requirements to those baseline restrictions.
Okay, where is it in here?
the page
They're, well, they weren't in a written form.
So how are you tied to them?
Well, Mr. Farmer, the ordinance still applies. So the architectural requirements that are in the UDO will still apply to the project.
Correct, but the additional things.
And that's what I was saying, is you all have to decide whether or not you want to include those, the DRB's conditions.
I mean, we can put those in written form, and add those to our notes, to our rezoning notes. But right now, it was just an approval of a set of plans, elevation plans.
The conditions on there, yes, those are attached to the. And if I'm not mistaken, those conditions.
Yeah, we have a written copy of them, but there are not a lot on there to what we see in some other ones.
Yeah, just to be clear, yes, ma'am, thank you. To answer your question, yeah, on what was submitted for everybody's information, particular buildings in the front load orientation should include mix and architectural materials and a variation of architectural components to accent the garage doors. Blank wall shall comply with the ordinance. Acceptable facade materials include but not limited to the following: wood siding, wood shingles, brick, stone, stucco, fiber, cement, cementitious siding, shake siding, and similar materials. Vinyl shall only be used on windows, soffits, and trim. So that's what was outlined, and that's what you were looking for as far as being a robust, accents for architectural integrated composites for your site, correct?
Correct. Correct.
And I also think that you could simply state that any requirements or, excuse me, any conditions and any elevations that were approved by the design review board, that those elements will be included. And the applicant is offered to put those in a list format, and we can make sure that we have that to present to the town council as well.
Yeah, I think they had shutters in it and some of that sort of thing. And you mentioned 2-car garages on the alley, is that correct?
Correct.
1 car on the rest of them, or is it mixed, or?
Yeah, I believe the alley-fed units are 24-foot wide, which would accommodate a 2-car garage. The front loads, those have enough space for tandem space as well. So you would only be required to have a 1-car garage if that's what the product ends up being.
Okay, now, so it may be 1, it may be 2. Is there a certain percentage you're willing to do 2?
Yeah, each unit's going to have two parking spaces, regardless if it's a 1-car garage or a 2-car garage.
Which means only one person will park in the driveway, because we all know that if they go into that garage, no one's gonna park behind them, because then they're gonna have to go out, move their car.
And I will say, on top of that, there's a lot of on-street parking on this site plan as well. A good number of spaces will be scattered out throughout the development to accommodate anyone else that wants to park.
Where are those located? Can you pull that map up?
I think it's on the north, the west
Yeah.
side.
Primarily, the opportunities are along the public street.
They'd be able to park there 24 hours a day? Because normally the HOA is gonna say no overnight parking on the street.
That's something we could look at when we write those documents, correct?
I mean, I can see where you have indentations in the step-in of the curve and marked parking spots on the street.
Yes.
That's like the parking. You've got it here. You've got it here. Like right in here, it goes around.
No, there's no parking here.
Sorry, everyone. I just wanted to help point out the on-street parking, just because it's a little hard to see with this. There is some along this entire row here, as well as both sides here, and then up here towards that pond potential trail connection. There's certainly room to add it more along the public right-of-way, along the public road here, but we were really just trying to locate it within this open space area, just since that's where people would typically be parking. Well, actually, no, sorry. There wouldn't be opportunities along here because there would be the driveways. So you wouldn't have on-street parking along this. I misspoke. But we have located plenty along here and along here.
And the alleyway, how wide is the alleyway?
The alleyway, it is a 20-foot, I believe. Yeah, based on the standards of the town of Troutman is how we would base it. But yeah, it ranges from 16 to 20 feet typically.
And the darker color, is that the unit?
That's the building pad
Or
itself.
that's it may not be that big. I mean, you're not covering all that because it looks like there's no place to park if you cover all that. I guess you can build anywhere on that kind of, you got that movement.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, you'll have undulations, things like that they've talked about in those architectural covenants. They're not gonna be just like rectangle, exactly. There will be edits to that. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Can I ask on your alleyways, how wide are they? And does the state maintain? Will the state maintain the alleyways with snowplow? Or does the snow go if there's snow in the alley?
Apparently, what I think is, a question was already asked, those alleyways will be HOA maintained. So that means that they're private, essentially. So then, that's up to the HOA to remove the snow or hire that to be done.
Okay, but the people in the alleyway really don't have any on-street parking at all. And a lot of residents have, if you go around in Troutman, a lot of residents have 3 and 4 cars at their places.
The public comment time is, well, I mean, we're gonna try to address that. Can you? Yeah, I mean, you can't park there because of the driveway. I mean, they wouldn't be able to get in and out.
On your alleyway, you have a 2-car garage. So you would have 2 cars in the garage, and then you could have essentially 2 cars at the door of the garage. So technically, you could have 4 cars parked on per site. But, like you alluded to, you're always having the one person in the crazy corner that's gotta leave first. So you'd have to just jockey around, and that's gonna be an inconvenience for the people. Yet, on an alley-supported residence, you would have an opportunity for 4 cars to be off the road at the site, correct?
No, not on the alley-fed portion, and I'll try. I'll come up to the front, and I'll try to speak louder for the town clerk and everybody. This is roughly, 5 to 7 feet from that curb. So you would have 2 cars per home. There wouldn't be the tandem spaces.
Oh, gotcha. I apologize, yes.
But there would be the tandem along the public road where you could have that.
Gotcha.
So these would typically be 20 feet from half the sidewalk to allow additional coverage.
So the alleyway will be a 2-car garage.
Yes.
And that's gonna be, is that shown in the drawing? That it's, or can it be either one? If it's not in writing, I mean, I don't even have a big copy of that to be able to see it.
If it's not written in there, then you're welcome to make that as a condition of your approval for the alley loaded townhomes. Because that's our intent,
Okay.
2-car garage.
And maybe some of the others may have too, or the size won't allow it?
The size, we envision kind of 1 car with 1 car in the driveway, or sometimes we can fit 2 in the front. But the intent was to have two parking spaces per dwelling unit with additional parking on the on-street.
And these are, how many bedroom?
It's typically a 3-bedroom.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yep. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Any more comments, questions? Okay. Is there a motion regarding rezoning CZRM 2304?
I don't even know what page it is.
Before you make a motion, are we going to add some of those things that we were talking about? Because that kind of, I feel like is really important. We do need to add that, I feel like. I feel like at least it needs to go to the town board when they make their decision, and that it needs to be added for stuff that we think is gonna be important. The easement for the roads and that type of stuff.
Actually, we could compile a list if that's what we want to do right now, before we make a motion.
All right, what I have right now is easement for, Perth, per the mobility plan for NCDOT's future plan, roadway plan. Two-car garage to service alleyways, alleyway loaded, two-car garages. Approve the more robust, architectural integrated, materials.
Oh, I don't know how to word that.
I know you're making a list, but I would make a motion to request continue to the request to a specific meeting to facilitate additional dialogue or the provision of specific information. I think that falls into what we're discussing. They're making a commitment to have additional information put in writing. We have a list that we need to construct. And I make a motion to continue the request to a specific meeting so that those two portions can come together.
Well,
That is a planning board, you all don't have the ability to table. You have to have a motion forwarded to council within 30 days. I take that back. You can table, but you would have to hold a special meeting. We would have to schedule a special meeting in the next probably week for us to be able to get it to council for next month's meeting.
okay, if we have 30 days from when?
From
They
the,
agree to it.
from the date that you receive the information is how the statute reads.
So that was Thursday.
Correct.
So it doesn't say we have to have it by the time town council meets.
You have 30 days to forward the recommendation to council, and that would be in the form of a council agenda packet.
So that
Because the
would-
public hearing for this is scheduled for February the 8th. Is it the 8th or the 11th? I'm not sure. The 8th, yes. So you were looking at needing to have a motion to them before the 8th,
But
by the 8th.
we have 30 days. So if we are still within our 30 days and we don't have it to them before their meeting, then they can postpone it to the next meeting or have a special meeting.
Or they can vote on it themselves.
Or they can, what's the rule on that? I mean, we don't have 30 days if we don't have 30 days. I mean, this is gonna be kinda hard, which there's a lot of, there's a,
I mean, everything changed.
yeah, it changed a lot, and we're trying to do this and not miss stuff. Would kinda be nice if,
Would you guys be willing to give us 30 days just so that we can put it together? We haven't done apartments, obviously, that we need to do this kind of stuff for, so would that be?
yes,
I mean, coming out of our DRB meeting, we don't mind putting together a list of, I mean, it was a pretty detailed conversation that we had. A list of those requirements that came out of that meeting. I mean, that's something we could do rather quickly and get to you.
And the 30 days, I mean, the intent is that you forward a recommendation on to the town council for their next meeting. If you say we're gonna take 30 days to do this, it won't get to the council until after the 30 days are up, and then you would be in violation of that statute. So it's not saying we're gonna give you 30 days, it's saying you need to make a decision and have it forwarded to the council before the end of that 30-day period. The council meets the second Thursday of every month, so you wouldn't be able to get it to them by the 8th of February, which is when the public hearing's been scheduled, so that means it would be pushed to the March public hearing, and you would be outside of that 30 days.
if we give it to them in writing before that,
I don't think that's how it works. Kim, do you have a comment on that? I mean, it has to be actually forwarded to them at a public hearing in which they are making a decision.
yeah, I think it's, I mean, we have done it in the past, years back, we have done that.
And I don't know if the statute changed or it was just not done correctly, because that is the statute, and it's been that way for a long time.
Well, I think the applicant agreed to it. I mean, are y'all willing to?
Just a little confused, so I'm sorry. I felt like we followed the process to submit the application for rezoning at the right timeframes. And we submitted the packet with the conditions by the deadline, and followed that process. It has all the information in there. So, not sure what else you want to add. I think we've addressed 3 items that you'd like to add to it. So,
I think the problem is what we have in our packet's not what you're saying you're doing now. It's changed, and we don't have all the changes reflected in here.
the changes, there was one that we said we would agree to do the two cars.
Right,
And,
that's
but
not,
don't you have the right to add that as a recommendation
yes,
to the town?
we do.
Okay.
So you do not want to allow the 30 days is basically what you're saying.
Oh.
Let's go ahead and make the list.
Yeah.
We'll just take the time and try to do the best we can right now, and town council can build on that.
That'll be no problem. Okay. Well, they said yes on the 3 that we have right there. The only question I have is the berm that you had. Okay, do you want a berm or not? Or are you looking at a front load?
Okay, we're,
I mean,
so,
Here's my thoughts. I feel like we're being rushed.
Mhm.
I feel like this does not meet UDO. It doesn't meet what our projected plan was for our future growth. If they want to do it highway business and do apartments, let them do it.
yeah, you need to
I say-
speak into the microphone.
And this is a public meeting.
okay.
You can
I'm sorry.
speak into the microphone so everyone can hear what we're saying.
I just think that at this point, we really need to think about what, as a town, we've come together and created over the many years that we worked on the projected growth of our town. We have not followed that very well. And I just feel like we really need to focus on what we saw going there, which was medium-density residential. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, obviously, as a board, we'll vote. If most of us want to vote that way, though, I really think that we need to go with a list to put in front of the board. But, you know, we spent lots of money as a town to create something that we had many, many people come to many, many meetings. And, you know, we're approving things that are just not within those parameters. I don't feel like we are doing the community a service if we're not listening to what they're asking of us. You know, we did create that for a reason.
Yeah, and this is, this particular, area or this particular tract is neighborhood, it's not medium residential, it is neighborhood center.
Commercial, neighborhood commercial.
That's what the future land use shows. That was,
But the density is still more than what it would be, correct?
Actually, it's less.
this,
It would be more, it could be more, yes. A neighborhood commercial, if it was zoned neighborhood commercial and under the current HB, if they did a multifamily project, it could be higher. There's actually no maximum density that was established by the UDO that was adopted in, I guess, 2018 is the UDO we're working off of now.
12 something,
Understood
and
then,
it was at 10.
yeah, this is not medium density, not this
And,
area.
yeah, I think you're thinking of the
I was.
RM. RM does have a density max of 12, but HB does not, and neither does neighborhood commercial for multifamily.
I think we need to make the list and just you know, we are an advisory.
And,
board,
and
so
I'd be happy, I mean, I can tell you what I kind of picked up on while you were talking and some notes I made, if that would be helpful. And we're more than happy to help with the list. But just, I mean, I heard that you all, Mark, you specifically were asking for right-of-way to be donated for future widening on Perth Road. Randy, you were concerned, you wanted to make sure that they were gonna commit to 2-car garages on the rear-loaded units. You all wanted to see all the architectural conditions they agreed to at the Design Review Board incorporated into the product that is built there. Those are the ones I had. Was there anything else? And I know you went back and forth with the berm, but that's a decision I think you all have to make. I did want to point out one thing. I think a comparison was made to Redwood. And just so you know, those units are not front-loaded or rear-loaded, excuse me. That's actually the back of the unit that faces the street. So it's a little bit different. It's a lot different, actually. So you will have a different look. I think the comparison that the lady made to the units in Morrison Plantation is probably a better example. But I did want to point that out. But those are the 3 things I heard. And if you want to add to that, change it, you know, we're happy to take notes and help you guys with that.
How about asking this question, if you were to be a more robust streetscape plantings along Perth and Autumn Leaf in lieu of a berm, would you consider that? Okay.
I mean, as far as the berm's concerned, just my thoughts on the berm was simply what's facing the street. It's not my personal opinion. It simply is the architecture facing the road. What do we want as a town? Do we want to screen it, or do we want architecture facing the street? I know the Morrison Plantation townhomes that you're referring to, brick facade, rear-loaded single-car garage, lined with willow oaks going down Morrison Plantation Boulevard. I'm very familiar with them. Yeah, it's just simply, what do we want as a town on that corner, which is a very busy corner? Do we want to screen it with plant material that you're not really going to know? You know the community's there, but you're not seeing it.
I mean, that's why I said that
Or a wide open
streetscape, but
view.
streetscape where you can still see through, but yet you're creating more of a diverse foliage that you're talking about.
And just to add more flavor to that, Morrison Plantation Townhomes works great. You can walk up to Harris Teeter, you can walk up to Hoptown. Yes, sir.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah, it's certainly a different approach. I think that the berm scenario with seeing the back of the houses kind of promotes the kind of race car, driving fast going into town. And this is a different kind of look and feel that kind of it has more of a presence on the road that maybe hopefully won't make people speed down in Perth. I don't know if that's a wish and a hope, but it does. The architecture around you does lead to that, and especially with these sidewalks. We're wanting to put more sidewalks around here. The 10-foot multi-purpose path certainly brings people near the road to walk. So it's kind of keeping with that theme.
Yeah, and Morrison Plantation Townhomes works great. You can walk to Harris Teeter. There's other facilities around Morrison Plantation Townhomes. You can walk up Blue Harbor Bank. You can go get your car washed. You can walk up to IHOP or Hoptown and get a beer and walk back home. That's not this corner. I get your point. I understand what you're saying. You can walk, but we're walking to nowhere.
You've got a gas station across the street, but it's within the community as well. And there's future HB zoning in that area. So.
We don't have crosswalks going across Perth.
Yeah.
Morrison Plantation Townhomes put up crosswalks. They put the signs up. It's 15 miles per hour down Morrison Plantation Boulevard. It's just a different. If this was in downtown Troutman, then I could get it. You could walk to Pellegrino's. You've got the sidewalk right here where you can walk up to Food Lion.
It's kind of conflicting with the required sidewalks along the main roads.
I understand.
So
we're talking about philosophy here as
Yeah.
far as walking to somewhere and having a community. And I get your point. It's just not there on that corner.
Someone's got to be first.
I understand. I understand.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Look. I think the intent originally was for that particular track or that area to be the shops and the stuff to walk to from the other neighborhoods. That was what we envisioned that to be, not more houses or maybe a combination of houses and or apartment or townhomes. And I mean, are you open to the idea of putting some kind of retail in there or some kind of business in, so there is a place to walk to?
Yeah. I would agree that the original or the landowner's first intent when they purchased the property was to bring a grocery store there. That's no secret. That went through a downturn, 08 downturn. Previous to that, they tried to get traction, couldn't get it done. And then through the last 10 years of another economic cycle, was not an opportunity to bring any kind of commercial there that was viable. So through multiple real estate cycles and economies, we feel this is the best use for the property. Sometimes you need more rooftops to get commercial. We'll say that there's other portions of HB zoning that surround this to aid to the node, so it's not a lost opportunity at this location.
And then you wouldn't be willing to make a portion of that some sort of a business?
That's not our intent. It's really, it's kind of a small enough site that it would take up a large portion of the property if you made a portion of a commercial with the required parking, be a bunch of parking lots off of it, and it would lead to more traffic. So this is certainly an opportunity to kind of downzone it and solidify that and create a quality community that would hopefully spur that node and becoming more attractive to commercial uses or neighborhood services rather than industrial uses or warehouses or more storage. I don't think we need any more storage, but.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else that we want to put on there, or, I mean?
You got a list of recommendations going?
Yes, sir. I've got the 4.
Does that encompass what Lynn had verbalized?
And how do you put in if you want a stronger vegetative, how do you word that?
Well, we could just state that you're requesting an increase in streetscape on Perth and Autumn Leaf Road. And we could ask that they provide us a specific landscape plan. And I think we could take that to the design review board and have them review it. So that's an option.
That's more restrictive, so that's, you know, submitted, that'd be easy for staff to assist with.
Okay.
I'll make the recommendation that we approve the site contingent on the 4 conditions. Please.
Sounds like you are willing.
Would you like me to read them?
Need to make the motion.
Yes, please.
Okay, the 4 conditions I have are, the applicant will provide an easement on Perth Road for future widening purposes. Did we need to state a number there, Mark?
I'm sorry, say that again.
On the easement for Perth Road widening, do you want to state a number?
To follow the Troutman mobility plan.
Okay.
And with input with NCDOT's future TIP project plan.
Okay, got it. The applicant agrees to provide 2-car garages on all rear-loaded units. All conditions, architectural conditions as approved by the DRB will be incorporated into the elevations of the final product. And then an increase in streetscape along Perth and Autumn Leaf Roads will be provided. A landscape plan will be submitted to staff to be reviewed and approved by the Design Review Board.
And is the sidewalk or the multi-path, are they providing that?
That is a requirement, yes. The town is.
And on both roads?
I believe, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, he's our mobility plan guy, I believe along Perth, it's just a 5-foot sidewalk.
5-foot sidewalk and a 10-foot on Autumn Leaf,
On
is that
Autumn
correct?
Leaf, correct.
Now, okay. And are y'all good with those conditions? Okay.
I made
So
the motion,
you
so I need a second.
Okay. Is there a
And could
second?
you,
Well, you can't vote.
can I make one comment? Could you just make a statement that these are in addition to all the conditions that the applicant, that are in the staff report? All the
I'll make a
conditions.
motion that, or addition that
In
these
addition.
recommendations are additional to the staff report. Is that right?
For the conditions provided by the applicant, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll get it right here in a minute.
Because there's 4?
Yes. Not yet. They'll. Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't get the vote yet.
But you can second if you want, or not.
You can't
I
second.
just second, he said I couldn't.
No,
Just
not
sit
yet.
here and
No, you can talk and. Okay,
Okay.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay. You get that, Kim? All right. All right, is there a motion regarding consistency statement?
In reference to case number CZRM 23-01, this action describes consistency, that rezoning is conditional zoning of mixed residential is consistent with the 2018 Troutman strategic plan desired to improve different housing and price points within Troutman. Therefore, the proposed request is reasonable in the public's best interest as it proposes to allow residential development in areas of Troutman where it is appreciated.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed? Okay. All right, thank you.
No, sir, we're good.
I had to go, so I'm good now. When you get my age, you can't go past about 2 hours, hour
All
and a
right.
half.
Thank you. Come back to the town board meeting. Okay. Okay. Case number RZ 2401, 1250 Charlotte Highway, request to rezone 9.82 acres located on 1250 Charlotte Highway on southwest corner of Charlotte Highway and Flower House Loop from Iredell County residential agriculture to highway business. This zoning is in conjunction with the annexation of the property. I will now turn it over to Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for rezoning. This is not a conditional rezoning. The applicant this evening is C2C Land Development. They are also the property owners. This property is currently located in the county and it's zoned RA, which is residential agricultural. They would like to have this property rezoned to highway business. Again, this is a traditional rezoning, so there's no concept plan that's required as part of the application. The reason we are hearing this rezoning request this evening is that the applicant has requested that this property be annexed into the town. When we annex property, we have to rezone it or assign it a zoning classification, and they have requested HB at this time. The property is approximately 7 acres in size. It's located on the corner of Flower House Loop and Highway 21 or Charlotte Highway. This is our current zoning map. The property is currently located in the county. It's zoned RA. This is the future land use map. I want to point out that the limit of our current future land use map ends right here on Flower House Loop. So this property wasn't even considered when our future land use map was drafted. The reason for that is we have a annexation agreement with Mooresville, and the line is right here. So these properties were going to be, if ever considered for annexation, they were on the Mooresville side of that line. However, we did go to Mooresville and ask them to move it, so the line has been moved. So this property is now on the Troutman side, and the applicant is wanting to come into our town limits. Based on the information that we have before us this evening, staff would recommend approval. Even though it doesn't show on our future land use map, we feel like that there's land use in the area that it is consistent with. We've also seen some rezoning, and there's going to be some development in the area that's commercial. Highway 21 is really our main highway or thoroughfare to exit 42. So we're seeing commercial development happening in this area. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And I believe the applicant is here as well.
Okay, Lynn, I've got a question on, where is that line now?
Oh, good. That is a good question, and I'm not sure how far down it comes, but it does, those two. Yeah. Okay. It's the two, it took in the two that we are considering for rezoning this evening.
Okay. All right, and would the applicant like to speak at this time?
My name is Richard Densler. I represent C2C Land Development. As Lynn had stated, we've been working with the town of Mooresville for a little over a year to try and get this property released. I guess Troutman's jurisdiction on the east side of 21 goes down to Westmoreland Road, and then on the west side of 21, it went to Flower House Loop Road. Mooresville had no intention of servicing these two parcels with utilities. As you all know, right across from the charter school, there's water and sewer right there, so it just made sense. So we worked with Lynn and the attorneys and the town of Mooresville to get the ABC store site, which is the next site adjacent to ours to the south, as well as ours. We've worked kind of hand in hand with the ABC store to kind of come up with a site plan that worked for both of these parcels, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay.
Answer any questions you may have.
Anyone have any questions? All right, thank you so much. Okay, I will now open the meeting up for public comment.
How you doing tonight? My name is Jesse Vicente. I own the property directly behind the blue square. I'm at 568 Flower House Loop. My question here basically is, if we rezone that, what is allowed in that development? Because it borders my property. as well as where the ABC store is going in, that goes behind my property. So my question here is, if it is rezoned, what is allowed there? You know, I don't want, it's too small probably for a grocery store or something like that, but, you know, a CVS or a Walgreens with lights on all night, you know, I'm concerned because I've been here 20 years, you know, the town is boomed. The whole area there is, you know, it's coming south. Everything is coming this way, and, you know, we're not stopping it. But I'm just concerned what is allowed if it is rezoned, and what restrictions are for that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything that's allowed in highway business would be allowed because it's not conditional. There's, I don't know, I have the list in front of me.
Yeah, I can address that if you'd like. Highway business, we talked a lot about it in the last application. It is designed for, you're absolutely right, there could be a pharmacy that goes on that site. I believe the applicant does intend to develop for some sort of retail, commercial use, but that is what it's intended for, is for retail uses that aren't just your neighborhood commercial uses, but retail that might attract people from, you know, a little bit further distance, like a pharmacy. That was a very good example. A CVS, a Walgreens, something like that could go there. That type of commercial. It really isn't large enough for a grocery store. You're right about that. But you could have some commercial. You could have some office uses there. It could be a urgent care, that type of thing. So.
What is the requirements backing up to buffering from a
I believe it's still just 25 feet in our ordinance. But we would require, you know, all that those buffer requirements are met, as well as any landscaping standards. Those would all, you know, we would enforce anything that's currently in the ordinance. We actually have some lighting standards as well.
Yeah, light spillage and that sort of thing. Yeah, there's.
That is not a requirement, no, sir. Mm-hmm.
Did we add a berm or not on that?
That's only on residential property, single-family residential that backs up to a main road.
Okay. Well, he's single-family residential, correct?
It's for new development, new single-family residential. I think the intent is to have a berm for any new subdivisions that are built on a main roadway, to create, not to protect so much as to create streetscape, which is, you know, sort of what Mark was alluding to.
Yeah, I was thinking there was some sort of buffer like trees or something that you couldn't see through.
There's a buffer, that is correct, a berm. That will be required, but it's not a berm.
Okay, some sort of a buffer that you, at least in the future, wouldn't be able to see through. Anyone else?
Annexation's always touchy. And so, you know, I feel like that as we look at annexation, we must look at the law. And you probably have some more questions. And you may not be able to get them answered in the time that you have. So I think it's important to understand the time that you have to get these things answered. So from Coates Canons of Law, Education for Planning and Zoning, General Statute 160D-604B, the planning board gets at least 30 days, to review and comment in carrying out its task of reviewing proposed amendments. The planning board is not required by state law to hold public hearings, but it may, and local governments may require it.
It really doesn't have anything to do with the applicant.
It has everything to do with this case, because you might want more time, and obviously you want to operate in the law and not be threatened with violating the law. If the 30 days is not met, then it can go to the council, and the council can act without your recommendation. Thank you.
And that is understood, correct? You all understood that that was what was happening with the 30 days.
Okay, is there anyone else like to speak? Okay, Kim, did you get any? All right, thank you. I will now close the public comment time. Are there any comments from the board? Is there a motion regarding rezoning CZRM 23-04? I'm sorry, CZ 24-01. Is there a motion? Yes, for CZ, I said the wrong thing. Regarding rezoning RZ 24-01. Is there a motion? Okay.
I'll second, go ahead.
All right, what's the motion?
I'd like to make a motion on case number RZ 24-01 to rezone requested to highway business zoning.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, we now need a motion regarding consistency statement for RZ 24-01.
Statement, rezoning to highway business is consistent with 2035 future use plan to allow appropriate highway-oriented commercial development at this location. The request is consistent with currently adopted Unified Development Ordinance. The request is reasonable and in the public interest as it proposes to allow commercial development in areas of Troutman where it is appropriate.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, case number RZ 2402, 1270 Charlotte Highway, request to rezone 7.6. I'm not sure if that decimal point was supposed to go on out, but acres located at 1270 Charlotte Highway, just to the south of the intersection of Charlotte Highway and Flowerhouse Loop from Iredell County RA to highway business. This rezoning is in conjunction with annexation to the property. Now I'll turn it over to Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application also for rezoning. The applicant is the Troutman ABC Board. They are also the property owner. The property, again, is right next to the piece we just looked at. It's also zoned RA in Iredell County. They are requesting that this property be rezoned to highway business. Again, there's no site plan that is required as part of the application, since this is not a conditional zoning request. The applicant has asked that the property be annexed into the town, and as a part of that annexation process, they would like to have the HB zoning district applied to the property. The property size is 7.6731 acres. That decimal point, you're correct, Mr. Chairman, was in the wrong place, so I appreciate that. The property that we're looking at is this highlighted in red. It fronts directly on Charlotte Highway. It's right next to the piece that we just considered for annexation. It is zoned RA in the county. The piece right next to it will be brought into the town at HB as well. And this is our future land use map. Again, this parcel was not considered on our future land use map, since at the time that map was created, the property was located on the Mooresville side of that annexation agreement, which has since changed. Based on the information we have before us, as well as the surrounding land uses and rezonings, staff would recommend approval of the applicant's request.
Thank you, Lynn. We'll now open up the meeting for public comment.
I have a question. Maybe you don't know, since it was the ABC board. Why wouldn't they put the second liquor store next to the proposed Food Lion, where there's already traffic control and it's already annexed and it's already got utilities, as opposed to further up where they're asking for the change now? Do you know if it was even proposed to Food Lion?
I don't know.
I was not involved in that process.
Who owned? Oh, the Food Lion's down by the charter school. Right. But I'm saying ABC store that property for a while. Well, that was, I'm a little piece of land in that yellowish area. And if the liquor store's closer, it doesn't matter to me. But it just seemed to be more logical to put it next to the Food Lion where you've already got customers coming in. There's already a traffic light there, as opposed to further up. That's a very bad intersection. People on Flower House Loop get really, really antsy about getting out onto the road. If this piece of property is long and narrow, the only entrance and exit is going to be off the highway. So. Maybe where is the proposed Food Lion? Isn't it down by the charter school? Yeah. Why would that? Charter school and right. So why would the DOT make them put a light up at Flower House Loop?
It's an off-site improvement.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, and please address your comments to the board.
Oh, well,
The,
sorry.
when the development comes in, they look at all areas, the whole area as a whole for a traffic study. So they look at all different intersections and where the traffic's going and coming from. And one of the areas is this intersection. And so since it was the sight distance where that house is, you come down Flower House and look back towards town, it's kind of blocking your view right there. So it's a very dangerous intersection.
Yep.
So yes, they have to install a signal per their development to do that. So it's going to make it more of a safer intersection.
Okay.
Now the cross connectivity to have a rear access or whatever, I haven't seen that, so I don't know if there's an additional part. But when you have an installation of a signal there, it'll make it safer for the surrounding areas.
Oh, definitely. But that was my thing, was it's a bad intersection now, and with everything just kind of blocked off, it didn't look like there was a way to get in and out other than the highway. All right, answered my question, thank you.
I'm Jimmy Moore. I live at 1288 Charlotte Highway, the next lot over. There's a space between us and the proposed ABC store. We've been living there 45 years. We've seen this development. We knew the people who own the dairy farm down at the bottom of the hill across from the charter school. We like that area. It's never been as populated as it is now, of course, but we already have bumper-to-bumper traffic when that school's in session from the stoplight past our house every morning, every afternoon. You can't hardly get out the driveway. And I have another question. How would you like an ABC store next door to you with all the other things that goes on with already there? You already got another area developing up the road from us. We're already beside Windward Point. And all across the road is getting development up there near the Shepherd School from both ends, both sides of the road. We don't have anything to do with ABC stores or any of that stuff. And here we're going to be forced to live close to it with all the traffic and everything else. We already got trash in the yard from all the other eating places. Just think about it. How would you like to live next door to it?
Thank you.
All right, on this piece of property, I noticed it's, you know, I tried to buy this property years ago when it went up for auction. And it was owned by the PBA, I think, for a while. It's a long piece of property. The ABC store, I'm assuming, will be fronted to the main road. What are plans for the you know, all the way back? Is that gonna stay just undeveloped? Is there a possibility that they can put a road in there and run something to the back and run more businesses back there? Because that's the problem I have, is if ABC owns it and they decide, well, we have 6 acres, 5 acres behind us we're not using, we can run some kind of road back and sell it to somebody who wants to put something else back there. And my property is, my backyard is, you know, up against that property. I have no offense with the ABC store, it could be anything, it doesn't matter. But being that, you know, 8 or 10 acres, and it's probably what, an acre, acre and a half wide and 6, 7 acres deep. For any kind of store, you're gonna need the frontage. But what is use for the rear of it, and if there's any kind of restriction, again, for developing some more businesses behind it? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's a straight rezoning, and I know the ABC board is the one that's owns it, but that don't guarantee that that's what's gonna be built there. They could sell it. I mean, so there's no guarantee of, that's probably what's going there, but we don't know that for sure. And rezoning cases like this, you have to take everything into consideration of anything it could be. And yes, they could build something to the back of it if it's wide enough. Put other things in there or whatever. If they can, they'll have to put I think a 25-foot buffer next to you. Wouldn't have to put anything between the two properties, and he's talking about interconnecting them, which is, I mean, ideally what you do want to do. And connectivity, there's no way to know. Yes. But that really, I don't think affects, I mean, it affects the impervious surface, I'm assuming. The watershed, or they have to put in a water retention pond.
If it's considered high density, correct.
Yeah, that part of it's unbuildable. If it is that way, then the back part would be for just. Well, I know there's a stream back there. Then you gotta stay 50 foot from the top of the bank and that kind of stuff, so you have a natural buffer, that helps with undeveloped, or keeping it undeveloped in that area. But as of right now, I don't think we can tell you. All that we know is that they have to abide by the vegetational buffer around their perimeter adjacent to you.
Anyone else?
My name's Trent Patterson. I pastor Beulah Heights Wesleyan Church on Ostwald Amity Road. Been there for 19 years. Love the town of Troutman. And Pastor Jimmy Moore that just spoke just a few minutes ago. I just want to speak, and this is maybe not the right format, but I do want to speak against an ABC store. I grew up in a home with an alcoholic father who grew up in the home of an alcoholic father. So it goes back several generations. I've seen the devastation that happens with alcohol. And I realize there's already one here. I guess that's part of my point, is we've already got one ABC store in Troutman. You've got access to beer and spirits everywhere you want to, anywhere you want to go in town. Mooresville, Troutman, Statesville. Plenty of places to buy alcohol. I just don't believe you need another ABC store. And that's just I'm used to speaking 30 minutes on a Sunday morning. I only get 3 minutes. I'm only going to take just another 30 seconds or so, but I just want to speak against it. I deal on a regular basis with alcoholics. I've seen the substance abuse issues. And yes, we have a lot of homes coming in, and I was surprised when I heard the number of homes that are unbuilt and the infrastructure is not there. That's a whole nother point. I don't want to go there right now. But I just hate to see the devastated lives as a result of more ABC stores. Whether it's Mooresville, whether it's Troutman, it doesn't matter the zip code or where it's located. I'm just against the evil of alcohol. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kim, did you get any? Okay, thank you. I will now close the public comment time. Are there any comments from the board? I will say that this rezoning, we really can't consider what goes on it because we don't know that for sure. We do know they own it and are asking to rezone it, the board, the ABC board. That's probably what they plan on. I know that's what they probably plan on doing with it, but it's a straight rezoning. We cannot even consider what goes on there. It could be anything that's allowed.
Will the town board meet, will it meet and consider that? Is that something that they be brought before the next board meeting?
I mean, you can speak to the town council when they have their meeting, but this is, I don't guess this is really about whether they're gonna build an ABC store or not. This is just the rezoning a piece of property. This really, we can't look at that as in our decision making. It's not conditional.
Sign that's out there says ABC.
Yeah. But we still, I mean, isn't that right?
Yeah, when you're rezoning property and it's not conditional, we have to take into consideration that any use in HB could go on that property. I think the gentleman made a good point that there, it's a big piece of land. We don't know all what will go on there. So I think the chairman's point this evening is we can't make a decision on whether or not to rezone it based on is it going to be an ABC store or not. I think they're charged with making a decision on should it be HB zoning. But yes, this will go before the town council. We would encourage you to please be there and speak to them about your concerns. And they'll hear this on February the 8th. It's 7 o'clock in this room.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, is there a motion regarding rezoning RZ 24-02?
I'll make a motion that we, on case number RZ 2402, that we approve as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we need a motion regarding consistency statement for RZ 24-02.
In reference to case number RZ 24-02, that the rezoning of the highway business is consistent with the 2035 future land use map and allowed appropriate highway-oriented commercial development at this location. The request is consistent with the current adopted unified development ordinance. The request is reasonable and in the public's interest, and is proposed to allow commercial development in the areas of Troutman where it is appropriate.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, under other business, I do have a request about can you look into it with the lawyers on this, on our 30 days? Because this keeps coming up, and I'd like something we know for sure, what the rules are. And
Or we just need to change our meeting date, because it
something.
doesn't make sense for us to meet 2 weeks prior, because then we have no time. We need to meet like the week after they meet, and then that way.
But we need to find out what the rules really, I mean,
You have 30 days to make the decision.
Letter of the law.
To forward your recommendation.
yeah, but I wanna know if it's after town council meets, if we can still, if they have to wait for us, they can have a called meeting also. And we could have a called meeting.
Or should we postpone putting it on their agenda?
That would not be 30, you would not be meeting the requirement if you did that. You have 30 days from the date you receive it in your packet to make a recommendation.
So that was
If
30.
you don't, if that does not happen, it will go to the board without a recommendation.
But that's not 30 days. Can you check on that and see what the
I'll
lawyer
be
says?
happy to, yep.
And, cause this ain't the first time this has come up, it's kind of a hard spot we get put in sometimes.
I mean, the only way to do it would be to call a special meeting, is the planning board. And the applicant would have to agree to it. This board is a recommending body, you're not making final decisions. So in a conditional zoning, if the applicant says, no, I'm not gonna make those changes and I don't agree to those conditions,
Oh, right.
you all would have to just forward it on to council as is. And just remember too, the main thing you're really looking at is the use fit there? I mean, if you don't feel like it's the right location for the use, that's really the big picture. And sometimes, focusing on that is really one of the most important jobs of you as the planning board. But that I will definitely get with Gary and get him to comment on it and let him know your concerns.
Okay, thank you. And, I'll now turn it over to you.
Well, speaking of Gary, and actually, we did actually talk about this issue today. I spoke with him because after last month's meeting, some questions came up about, why we want to see conditional zonings. We don't really appreciate these rezonings that are coming before the board that are just a rezoning without a concept plan. And I commented that, we can't legally do that. So I wanted to confirm that with him, just so that you all have some comfort level in knowing that we really don't have much of a choice. If the ordinance doesn't call it out as a conditional, that it requires conditional zoning, we cannot make an applicant do that legally. If the town council so chooses, because the town council is really the decision-making body, they're the ones who adopt ordinances, they're the ones that make final decisions. If they say, what you can do is send a recommendation to them and say, we as a planning board would like for you all to make changes to the UDO that would require anything that comes before us to be conditional zoning, and then they could choose whether or not to say, yes, we as a town are gonna go in that direction. But I did want you all to be aware of that. And he also asked me today if you all were aware of this 30-day requirement. And I said yes, and he said, make sure they understand that they really can't be tabling things. But I will get a confirmation from him as to what that really looks like and what your options are. I think that really you would just have to call a special meeting. But if the public hearing has already been set, which it is, but I'll be happy to get with him.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the way anything can be conditionally zoned, but we can't ask them to do that. I understand that.
Yeah,
but I know we can make recommendations that we won't approve it because we think it should have some conditions, and we can't put conditions on it.
Sure.
And town council could say, if they would do, I don't know if they're willing to or not, but they could just not approve it because of the adverse effects on the neighbors that they're not willing to work with or it might not be they're not willing to work with them, but if it's not in writing, there's no assurity that that's going to be what happens. That's why the conditions on certain things that maybe one time or one area might not need it, but another area, just because of the proximity to, you know, a large number of residences or whatever it might be. It could be a number, anything. I just see that as I realize we can't require them to do it, but I think sometimes maybe they can be steered in that direction if they want a favorative recommendation when there's issues. I mean, you probably tell them, okay, the likelihood that this will or won't pass sometimes, don't you?
Sure, if I know some history, yes. I mean, if we've seen something or heard something, and I think townhomes is a good example. I think we've heard several townhome projects that haven't been approved. Yes, I mean, and I don't know a lot of times, and I don't know how the council's gonna vote sometimes, because like I said, they are the decision makers. They're the ones who actually are rezoning properties.
Right.
You know, if I take something to them, there's been things that have gone before them that I thought, this isn't gonna pass, and it does, and there's been times that we've taken things that I thought were gonna be a slam dunk that weren't. So it's just very hard for me to tell an applicant, I never tell an applicant, this is a definite yes or a definite no, because
Right.
I'm not making the decisions.
Yeah,
My job is to say, this is what the ordinance shows. And trust me, people that come in here, they want me to tell them, can I get this approved? And that is really not something I would ever say yes or no definitely to. I can give them history. I can say, this is the history of the property or the history of this type of rezoning in other areas. And when we have one that came, I think there's been one that came before us like 3 times, that has been turned down 3 times. I mean, of course, I tell them this is gonna be difficult because we've already seen this piece 3 times and it hasn't been successful. But, you know, it's up to the council whether or not, that was Gary's comment. If council decides that that's how the direction they wanna go, that really is up to the elected officials.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think that we want everything to be conditional, but everything can be under the right circumstance. I think circumstance dictates whether it should or shouldn't be.
And I guess who defines those circumstances? And that's the question. I mean, what are these circumstances? You know, it can't. One thing that in zoning, planning and zoning, we have an ordinance and we have to treat, you know, there's requirements that allow things and there's requirements that don't. We try not to get into situations where we're saying, maybe, you know, if there's gonna be a list of, if it meets these requirements, then it's conditional, that's one thing. But we can't be arbitrary about it. We can't treat one applicant different than another, just based on, well, we think this one might have those, you know, it sounds very arbitrary, I guess is what I'm trying to say, so.
Well, that's not exactly what I meant. I meant under certain circumstances, there's things you can't do because it's straight zoning. You can't assure people of certain issues. You can't mitigate, because that's what it says, to mitigate for conditional. It talks about mitigating things that are adverse effects caused by the rezoning, and that's why it's there. But I know you can't just say, okay, because it is kind of, I mean, I guess it's a matter of opinion on some of that, so you can't really say you have to do that, but you know, they may decide, okay, this is gonna work better because we're working with our neighbors. And if they're on board with it, then it's a whole lot easier to pass something. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But that's not anyway, could you give us a little bit of update on some of the past things last month or two?
Well, last month we didn't have any public hearing items. We didn't have a meeting, so,
The month before, I believe.
we heard the North Fork Business Park Phase 3. I don't know if y'all remember that one, and the council did deny that. That was not approved. I think that was the only major rezoning we've had since we met last, so.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
We have gotten plans in for 2 of the Barium or Wakefield Village. We've got the age restricted. We're reviewing those plans right now, so they're starting the permitting process. And then we also got plans in right before Christmas. I believe it was before Christmas, for the single family section that's on the east side. So we're starting to see some movement there. So, you know, we might see some dirt moving up there in the next year. You never know. But we are reviewing plans. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, and we're getting a Zaxby's.
What?
Yeah.
Do not. We
Down at exit 42. So, yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Daughter's favorite. We drive to Mooresville or Statesville all the time, at least once a week.
All right.
Did they submit any plans on the single-family side of the Barium project? There was talks of potentially a Publix. Is that anything?
We have not seen any of the commercial come
Okay.
in.
The area that was, they didn't know what they were gonna put in there. Did they decide on what section?
We've only seen the 55 and over and the single family. We haven't seen any of that information. So.
And I think I saw I don't know if the sign's there now, but I think I saw another sign out past this area, past Flower House Loop at one time.
Probably Mooresville.
On the other side of the road, which
For
would be our side.
a sign for,
Rezoning?
oh,
He's talking about it, if you come out Westmoreland and make a right towards town, and the ABC is over here, right before that, it's a zoning sign up there.
I think that's,
oh, the Morning Star, yes. There's a mini, yeah, on the corner of Westmoreland and Charlotte Highway. There's a Morning Star storage that applied for a special use permit to go in on that corner. They had one approved several years ago and it expired, so they had to renew it.
okay. Yeah, I remember that.
I saw fresh surveyor stakes, if you're going down Perth past State Park through the new traffic light. On the right, that
yeah.
was 100 some odd
Yeah.
unit community.
That property's still in the county. It was not annexed into the town. That's the property, are you speaking about where they were gonna build the apartments? It came before the planning board and town council about 2 years ago, year and a half ago. They're on the corner. And they are surveying in that area, some of the, if it's on, is it on the right-hand side?
If you're going towards Mooresville on Perth, you go through the new light at State Park and continue down maybe 100 yards on the right. That was the entrance to a community that was going back in there that, I remember it to be patio homes, I think is how it was
They were really
proposed.
apartments. They were gonna be a for rent product. And, Niblock Homes has bought that property. And it's in the county, it's not in the town, so we don't have any jurisdiction over it, it's not in our ETJ. So I'm assuming they're building it by right as single-family homes.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Thank you, sir.
We'll sit here.
That Mark, I'm Mark. I'm Mark number 2.
There was a correction or something, so she gave it to everybody.
What was she asking?
Oh, okay.
Sir, thank you.
His email.
No, I guess I didn't.